So I want to welcome everyone to the Oakland Public Conservatory of Music in beautiful Oakland, California. What a beautiful place. And we're actually going to be celebrating 10 years next year, hoping that we'll all be together to bring in a new decade of more fabulous work by this beautiful place. And you here are a testament to the power of the work of the Public Conservatory and reasons that we need one to create spaces for us. So I want to welcome you, and we're in for a beautiful treat this afternoon with the work and absolute brilliant artistry of Arisa White. I got that, Lisa. Arisa. And the librettist of this fabulous piece, as well as my very good friend, Jessica Jones. We go way back, just a brilliant person and a fabulous artist and creator of her own. I just want to tell you a little bit about each of them, and then we'll move on to a bit of the work in progress, some of the music, and then we'll learn more about how this piece was conceived and get an understanding of what we're in for when the piece is performed in July over at the Black Box Theater at the Oakland School of the Arts. So Arisa White is our librettist, and she's a Cave Canem Fellow, as well as an MFA graduate from the University of Massachusetts in Amherst. Arisa is the author of the chapbooks Disposition for Shininess and Postpartum, as well as the full-length collections Hurrah's Nest and A Penny Saved. Her debut collection, Hurrah's Nest, was nominated for a 44th NAACP Image Award and was a finalist for the 82nd California Book Awards and the 2013 QBR, go on girl, Wheatley Book Awards. Member of the Playground Writers Pool, her play Frigidaire was staged for the 15th annual Best of Playground Festival. Co-editor for Her Kind, an online literary community powered by Vida, Women in Literary Arts, and the editorial manager for Dance Studio Life magazine. Arisa has over 15 years of arts administration experience, having worked with the Margaret Jenkins Dance Company, Jacob's Pillow Dance Festival, Urban Bush Women, and the Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater. She's co-produced 2 events for the National Queer Arts Festival in San Francisco, Out of Necessity in 2011, and Mixed, Blended, and Whole in 2012. She is a board member for the Center for Transformative Change in Berkeley and an advisory board member for Flying Object, a nonprofit arts and publishing organization in Hadley, Massachusetts. Whew, my goodness. I'm going to keep going. Yes, absolutely. we got to shine the light on brilliance, my goodness. So, your story. Arisa has received residencies, fellowships, or scholarships, or whatever, from the Center for Cultural Innovation, Investing in Artist Grant. Headland Center for the Arts, the Port Townsend Writers Conference, Rose O'Neill Literary House, Squaw Valley Community of Writers, Hedgebrook, Atlantic Center for the Arts, the Prague Summer Program, Fine Arts Week Work Center, and Bread Loaf Writers Conference. Nominated for a Pushcart Prize in 2005, her poetry has been widely published and is featured on the recording Word with the Jessica Jones Quartet. Let's give it up for this brilliant sister, Arisa White. And now Jessica Jones, Berkeley native. She's a tenor saxophonist and pianist and has worked with Joseph Jarman, Cecil Taylor, Don Cherry, and Peter Apfelbaum, as well as a variety of Haitian, Caribbean, and African bands, and a trombone player by the name of Angela Wellman.
That's in there.
It's in there. These, I just had to stick it. These influences helped form her compositional direction, which is grounded in the jazz tradition, and as is truly traditional in jazz, reaches for new directions and a unique sound. The primary outlet for Jessica's compositions for the past 20 years has been the Jessica Jones Quartet, a piano-less quartet founded with fellow tenor player and husband, Tony Jones. She's received released 4 albums of her band, including guest artists from the community of innovative East and West Coast musicians and poets. Jones received an NEA study grant and has been profiled in Jazz Times magazine. Her quartet has played at the Knitting Factory Festival in New York City, the Bay Area Jazz Poetry Festival with Arisa White, and the Eddie Moore Jazz Festival in Oakland, California, where the group headlined with special guest Don Cherry. The group has been featured in venues on the East and West Coast of the United States and released 4 CDs to critical acclaim: Family, Nod, my eyes are going bad on me. I gotta put these on. I like these. Here we go. Family, out of 9 Winds Records, 1997. Nod, New Artists Records, 2004, featuring Tristano lineage pianist Connie Crothers and Joseph Jarman of the Art Ensemble. Beautiful work. Of Chicago, Word, New Artist Records in 2008, featuring vocalist Candace Jones and poets Arisa White and Abe Maneri. And Live at the Freight, Jessica Jones and Mark Taylor, in collaboration with French hornist Mark Taylor. Media coverage includes Wired, Jazz Times, Jazz Is, Jazz Now, All About Jazz, New York City Jazz Records, Signal to Noise, Nashville City Paper, Bay Garden, East Bay Express, Cadence, and several jazz websites. Jones is also an innovative jazz educator and consultant, working with children on improvisation, composition, and oral traditions. She's worked with the Cazadero Performing Arts Family Camp as co-director, Jam Camp West, founded and directed the Youth Jazz Camp at Feather River and the Winter Jazz Camp at Alice Arts Center in partnership with the City of Oakland Cultural Arts. And now at Jazz at Lincoln Center, Jessica is developing music programs for youth. She currently teaches jazz to students at the Brooklyn Friends School, where she runs a creative music concert series. And now we are going to...
Time's up.
Let's give it up for Jessica. No, we gotta... Oftentimes women's stories are not told, and so whenever we get a chance to really sing our praises, we must take the time for one another to do that. And so I just had to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So speaking of which, we're going to move into a piece, right? To just give you a sneak preview of what to expect, and then we will begin our conversation.
Yes. So this past 2 days, we've been auditioning vocalists, and we have made a wonderful selection. We have Phoebe Sorgen, who's playing one of the Fates, Jeannine Anderson, who's playing Rima, I always pronounce her name, Larena Burno, who's playing Willow, Amber McZeal, who's playing one of the Fates, and Mary Ford, who is understudy, but she's also playing parts of the Fair Maid and Cherelle and providing vocals and backup. And so what we're going to do is we're going to sing, they're going to sing Beautiful Lullaby.
Beautiful
So let's get into the meat of this. I'm very, very interested to hear about how you conceive this piece and what are the inspirations for the project. Let's begin there.
So it started with a collection of poems called Postpartum. And I wrote this back in, I believe, like 2004 after I spent a week at Kaveh, which is a writing retreat for poets of the African diaspora. And there I met Ritika Nazrani and her son Jihan. They came to spend time with Yusuf Kumiaka that week. And so we were interacting. And then 3 weeks later in the Washington Post, they reported the murder-suicide. Ritika took her life as well as the life of her son while house-sitting in Washington, D.C. And so I was taking a class in Irish mythology and was really struck by studying Irish mythology, particularly with female poets, and thinking about like how mythology explains the unexplainable and can find meaning for loss and grief and those in-between states we often occupy. And I was wanting to try my hands at making sense of this incident, you know, like why would a mother kill her child, then take her own life? What was she feeling? What was she thinking? What was in her mind? And the poems became a way to answer that question, a sort of path into coming to a place of acceptance in a way, with just the human condition in general. And then I've always wanted to write an opera, and so Jessica and I have been kind of, friends and collaborating for the past 14 years. And one day when she was in Berkeley and you were picking me up to go rehearse with you, I believe, and I was like, you want to write an opera? And so ta-da, here we are. It's amazing what yes can do.
So why an opera? I mean, why have you always wanted to write an opera? I mean, and why opera?
I think I'm just dramatic, and there's something about opera that allows the intensity of emotion, and I think it's something just about music that can explain what words cannot. It allows you to tap into just the nuance of being, and just and then with my family we would sing and we would play and we would just do a whole bunch of creative things, and I just spent my childhood just making up little ditties, and so it made sense to want to just sing everything. Yeah.
Well, could you talk about some of the challenges then of like sort of adapting the poetry, collection into a libretto, an actual,
I think that
maybe speak a little bit more about the poetry itself first, the poems, and
so the collection is divided. The way that I organized the collection is like one long poem essentially. Like there's no necessarily like a divide in terms of here's a poem with a title. I wanted to give that sense of everything's blending in. And so what I did was I kind of constructed a few storylines that are operating in the collection. One is that of the fates. They're modeled after the Greek fates. It's Lachesis, Nona, that's the Roman name, and Atropos. And each one of them has a role in constructing their life. And so they have their own kind of persona poem in the collection. Then there is the story of the young woman who's being followed by the spirit of the young child. So that's one line of thought. Then there are the poems that's modeled after Ritika and her interior landscape. And that's very like a breakdown, dissonance, it's all over the place. And then there are poems from the point of view of Ritika that tells a very linear narrative story. So with all of those poems in mind and all of those kinds of stories, it was a matter of like deciding like who are the characters, what is the story. Like I'm going from this lyrical world into this real-time staged 3D theatrical world that I have to imagine, and how do I fit the lyrical onto the stage? And I think that was one of the biggest challenges, because there are things in it like where the spirit of the father comes and visits the Ratika character, and he comes and his tongue is cobbled. He speaks like, you know, a bird or something. And how do you translate that for the stage, you know? And I was reading Adrienne Kennedy's work, and she really dealt a lot with the lyrical, and sometimes she'll just write characters that have their head cut off. The character has their head cut off. That's so it's the responsibility now of the director to deal with it. So like once like I allowed myself that permission to be like completely magical in my thinking, it opened up a lot for me. Like it really did, because for a while I was just kind of stuck on like, oh, I have these characters, what are they doing, where are they, how do they interact, does the story need to be linear? But once and I think like working, you know, with Jessica just gives me their permission, you know, it's just like, okay, that sounds good, let's work with that. Yeah. Like, what does a cobbled tongue sound like? I don't know, that's what your job is.
Yeah, speaking of your job. Yeah. About the music, which of course when I think opera I think, you know, grandiose and, you know, big staging, you know, generally speaking, that sort of traditional opera. But I was taken by sort of almost the minimalist sort of structure of the music and just the sound of it, but yet this richness of when you get into the chordal structures and things and such, it's just like really there, and then we're back in and out. So maybe could you just speak a little bit about how you conceptualize sort of the harmonic, kind of rhythmic, melodic aspects of the music in order to connect, you know, and express the libretto?
Well, I also had thought of traditional opera, and so it was a little bit of a quandary how do these two things meet. And I've been going to see a lot of contemporary opera and traditional opera, and sort of saying, well, where are the rules? What are they? Why are we calling it opera? We discussed that a lot. What makes it opera and not something else? So again, same thing, kind of peeling away. Okay, I'm just going to do what I want to do. And one of the things is that I feel like Arisa's words tend to get across a feeling by the phrasing and the sound of the words, and it's almost like it's a familiar phrase, except the words that are involved are not familiar in the way that they're put together. And I sort of thought of that with the music also. So it's maybe some of the framework, part of what you're talking about is some of the frameworks are sort of familiar sounding, but they're a little quirky in the chords. And also the emotions about watching somebody progressively just get a little odd and off, and where does that happen? Where is the little creaky part? Where are the dissonances? Where is it not quite kind of matching what's around it? Is the kind of thing I try to get in the music. And some of the dissonance, the juxtaposition of sounds, and in one piece, people are in a completely different time than somebody else. It's sort of like, those are the uncomfortable, complex, nuanced things that Arisa was describing in real life. And sometimes when you go to hear music, it's just, you know, memorable and simple. And, you know, a couple of these songs are like that too. But I find it really interesting how open Arisa is to these unresolved feelings and unresolved things. And I sort of tried to go there with the music too. I think that's part of what you're talking about.
Arisa, you mentioned, you know, you gave her the sort of freedom and to just go with it, you know, and that's one of the things I've always appreciated about you. It's like you come with no judgment, and because of that, we get the music that we've got. I think you didn't lay any kind of particular judgment on it. I want to ask you a favor, if you would. The piece that you just did, could you kind of like maybe talk us through a little bit how you came up with you decided on this melody? One of the things I like also about your work is the way you deal with intervals, and the way those things happen, and when those come, I know when I've played and sung your music, it's like I'm not expecting that. We're going along, and then all of a sudden,
There's a leap.
it's beautiful.
Okay, good. Thank
So
you.
if you could say why those particular words, for example,
Land that way and so forth.
yeah, with that, can you show us a little bit, or
Well, I can talk about Lullaby for a split second because a couple of things you're
that's
referring
what I'm
to are in
talking
there.
about,
Yeah.
lullaby, and maybe
And then we have
give
another
a little
song. we can-
demonstration
Yeah,
just on
I hear.
how you put that together.
Yeah.
Well, there's, I mean, it's kind of, she wanted a lullaby, so it's, it has that kind of, I was thinking of a music box, like, you open a music box, that kind of sound, but the first note being,
There.
is kind of like, ow.
It's like Bella. It's like Bartok-ish.
Yeah, it is like
It's very
Bartok-ish.
much like Bartok.
And it's also kind of, it's supposed to be beautiful, and you can make that note beautiful.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Make
So
that kind of dissonant, close harmony beautiful.
yeah, so it's kind of believing in that note. But there's also the
go.
part where they sing, that's when they say the word beautiful. That's beautiful. But that comes up later in the opera, and I started to use that as a motif that recurs, and beauty is talked about at different points in the opera. And so I tried to use that motif for that idea of beautiful, and so that moves into different things. So that's one of the things. And also the way the words fall on this are it's another example of not quite falling where you think they're supposed to be falling, but there's the rhythm of is pretty regular. So the words make it almost irregular by the way the words fall. So whereas something else, if it had symmetrical words, I might mess around and make it more asymmetrical. Is that good information for you?
It's beautiful.
Okay, good.
I'm just here to moderate. So you tell us about your collaborative process, though. I'm very curious about that. And
So it's mostly like I started off writing. I mostly started writing the songs. That felt like the easiest place to go. Like once I was like, okay, here are the characters, here are some incidental characters, and then the songs kind of started to come out. And there's something about the poetry already within my own work is very rhythmic and musical, a lot of assonance and consonants and alliteration. So just I started to just pick up on those rhythms that were already in the work, and then sent stuff to you, and then what did you do with it?
I put music to it, but also we had these conversations because I found it was really hard to understand the poems.
Oh, yeah.
So we had a lot of conversations. Just what's going on in the story? What does this feeling mean? What are you saying when you say this sentence? And
Let's
what does this
actually
look
pass
like?
out.
And
I brought an example of a poem just so that we can all kind of look at something together. Like so, traveling. Let's do it.
yeah, if we could hear a bit of
Yeah.
that and see how all that comes together.
do you want to, since the camera doesn't have this piece of paper, do you want to read some of it?
Okay, so I'll read. Okay, My feet have fooled those who looked at my shoes. I've been traveling through inherited sorrow. I'm my daddy's girl. His blood thick with Valium veined me. In his madness, he was still lucid for home. Each night he came across gelatinous black, each step small quakes and the smell of coriander. Death could not quell his want for elsewhere. He was moored to my bedside, licking wings of every species to stick to his sails like stamps. Some nights the rope was a Windsor beneath his chin. When he was without it, it left barcode around his neck, or train tracks without the third rail, or nothing at all. When memories met up with us, when I had arrived from school, when he was in his office, when he was strung from the rafters, good night was a present in each other's grief. And I'll read the second one because they combine. He comes for sure, In a clean suit, a tie sucking the sky into seams, and tells me in a guttural bird song, as if his tongue is cobbled, he wants to meet his grandson. His words float the foot-long distance from my mouth to my ears. He smiles gums to match the tomato in my hand. I haven't seen him since I was 8. The surprise of my father keeps him at the welcome mat. I didn't expect him to come with the brown of his face smooth and dirt-free, his hair black and petroleum slick, my heart that beats half his own hiccups, and not a spoonful of sugar or glass of water can remedy gasp and spasms in the hall of my breast. When he takes me by the pulse, his hand is an ocean's pull. The tug of what holds me up slips each time I step back. It reaches like a lover who does not want the absence of me. I return to being a child. It is the first time I've seen the Atlantic. Afraid to step in, he lifts me. My belly to his spine, tight as barnacle to stone. Now the water comes between us. He is gone again, the way the summer goes, and I wonder, when was it that the lawn lost its green? And who invited this snow that refuses to let go the feet of whomever's passing? So one of the things that got changed is that in the libretto, the mother kills her daughter instead of the son. And I did that because I really wanted to focus on women and girls. I wanted to bring that attention to the fore more so by changing the gender of the child. It was important for me. I really wanted to speak to like just the shit that women go through, you know.
So this is an edited version of the song, which is edited version of the poem. You coming up with this?
Oh.
I've been traveling through inherited sorrow. I am my daddy's girl. Each night he came across gelatinous black. Each step, small quakes. Train tracks without the third rail. Without the third rail, or nothing at all, or nothing at all, or nothing at all, or nothing at all. I've been traveling through inherited sorrow. I am my daddy's girl. When memories met up with us, when I'd arrived from school, when he was in his office, when he was strung from the rafters.
Thank you.
So when did you know it was that was it? You're done. We've got a complete piece. How? I mean, at least for now. let's.
When do we know we're done?
Yeah, how did you know that you, what was that?
I mean, I don't know. Like, I mean, in some ways, I feel like 80% done. You know, there are pieces that do feel 100% done, and just hearing these amazing women sing the pieces just really brings a different kind of life and fullness to it. That makes it feel more done. But,
Right.
it's evolving. It's really evolving, and to be in the process of that evolution just really is humbling. I'm just really thankful. Yeah. So.
I think also it feels like you're witnessing something whenever you create something. You're witnessing something, and you try to let it have its own life, and hopefully it gives you a hint that you might want to stop for a minute.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I mean, we're learning what done is, you know, like we're kind of playing with the idea of a continuous sense of being with this whole play that I guess we're just like forming, like we're just constantly forming, so.
So you held auditions.
It was like The Voice.
Speak a little bit about that. I mean, curiosity around, you know, you obviously had a sense of, you know, what you were looking for, or did you, or
I think
how did you select? What was the process?
I think that we both rely a lot on intuition, and that it was if you build it, they will come kind of a thing, and being open to definitely wanting a diversity of voices, and, you know, trying to put it out there and see what we got back. And we're just so blown away by the you know, the musical talent and level and seriousness and openness and contribution level of the people that came. And I love that Arisa was just, we're doing an opera, so we're having auditions. So this is, you know, and I was like, okay. And, you know, so just making it be something, and then people want to be part of something, and the people that show up tend to be the people that are attracted to what you're trying to put out there. And so it feels really wonderful.
Yeah, no, and a lot of people came with a story to complement this work, which, like, all of you sitting here had something that brought you here, and that just deepened the audition process too. You know, it was. We were witnessing people's stories as well. Like this piece is bringing something to the fore. There's a conversation that needs to be had, and there's a hunger out there, and we're hungry too, and so we're making a house of food, I guess.
You said a diversity of voices. What do you mean by that?
Well, even though it's called an opera, not to be always just looking for an operatic voice, and people have that becomes a sort of a prejudice or a wall or something to think that sound is what it needs to be. So I think that just honoring how different people's individual voices are and tastes are, and I'm trying to have a variety of music so that would complement having that blend of those voices. And that's one of the things I'm really impressed with, is how easily people are blending their different voices.
Yeah.
And how easily they can. It's always been that way. That's actually the work of the Public Conservatory. I like to say music of the people, for the people, by the people. I mean, because of what you just said, you know, and opening those doors to the many voices that we all bring, rather than trying to require a bel canto sound. You say opera, I say bel canto, you know, that kind of thing. And no, you know, that's one particular tradition. So to not sort of reify the status quo
Totally.
is.
And we come from such different backgrounds. You know, it's not like, you know, I'm writing opera every day, and you are. We're coming from a place of so many sounds, and we want that, like, for this piece.
Well, I mean, you know, if we Well, let's see, I can't remember exactly what the word opera means, but it's an Italian invention, and stories that are sung, basically, all the way through, right? There's no speaking, maybe some recitative in there, but everything is sung through, right?
Pretty much.
Difference between that and a musical, right? So anyone can write an opera.
That's true. I was actually looking up the etymology of opera,
Thank you.
the Latin word it's to work, to labor.
Yeah.
I mean, it really changes it. Like, and I'm like, and we are doing labor. We are working it. Yeah. And so we're going to use all of ourselves to work it. And I think that's the part about what attracts me to opera is like we're using all parts of ourselves to make this theatrical experience be felt and sensed and all of it.
That's fascinating. I'm thinking now of operate.
Yeah.
All of those things are in operation.
Yeah.
And so to think about opera from that perspective, and then when we think about traditional opera, those folks are working it. I mean, when you see some opera that's really happening, the fire and brimstone, literally, people swinging from the rafters and all of that, is real. So. Can you speak a little bit more about that in relationship to working it? What are we working with postpartum? And maybe talk. No, I won't lay too many questions. But what are we working with when you say we're working it? What's the work?
The work, I think there's also the work of actually singing what Jessica has put together. I know there's some like challenges for the vocalists. There's that work, the work of conceiving it, the work of trying to tell the story of murder, suicide, of suicide, of having a conversation about death, about women healing each other, about our relationships, the work that goes into love. I think that's what it is. It's the way that I just recently got married, and there's something that I've grown to understand about love that's really rigorous, that you really have to put your joints into it, like all of them, and that's what this work is. It's love. It's love in that very difficult, challenging way that's going to make you look at all your blind spots. Me as an artist, I'm looking at my blind spots as a person, a woman, a wordsmith, the limitations as well as the expansion I can do, and that's all work. And then we all come together and we're doing it collaboratively and holding a space for each other. And there's a work in that too, I go home feeling exhausted these past rehearsals, but it's a good kind of exhaustion because I did a kind of work that I haven't been doing before. And so that's the work I'm talking about.
I think there's another aspect too where there's no caricatures in the work. There's no people that you kind of just say, oh, I get what that person is like. And I think that there was a lot of work that Arisa came to in having compassion for all the different kinds of people and for really going deeply into what different people might be thinking at different times. And I think when you said, the work and bringing it to people and this needs to be talked about, I think part of it is putting those things on stage without judgment.
Yeah,
it
and that's
brings
work.
part of the brings part of the conversation and brings people to also do the work of not judging and starting a conversation and that kind of thing. So to me, that's another thing where you just you can't take the easy way out with the characters and with the feelings.
Yeah.
I want to talk a little more about that work in relationship to this audition process that we were talking about. I know that when I'm, checking out people for my bands or especially one of the deep works I do, which is design curating. I call it teaching and learning spaces where we can go deep and go in. Right, there's a certain kind of requirement, that a kind of work that I want teachers to be able to to do, basically, to produce in a particular kind of way, and it's not what they think necessarily normally, right? I don't want you to teach the way you were taught necessarily,
Yeah.
right? And so there's a way that, you know, I learn and I see from others, this person is going to go in. This person's going to work for me. Really, basically, I mean, you know, but not for me, I'm the boss, but
Yeah.
work for me to bring out what we need to in this environment, right? For our students, right? And so when you're auditioning, you know, I'm assuming not necessarily, you know, we're talking about work because we're talking about the etymology of opera. We can keep on going with that because I'm, you know, a linguist too, but we're not going to go there. But I do want to talk about work now that we mentioned it in relationship to the work of auditioning, the work of you as listening and really being present. And I would imagine, you know, not having any, you know, filters, like the work of like just letting go of your filters, and also then therefore, how do you know that, how can you tell if someone's going to work for you? For singers, this is the person. You know, what, is there an experience or in that moment, or you go back and reflect, or how do you know?
I mean, a lot of things we're doing, it's the first time we've ever done
Yeah.
it. So
what was the experience, if we
We're
can just
going
reflect on it
outside.
right now?
we
See, and here they all are, so y'all better be
Well,
careful. Look, I mean, yeah, obviously. So what, I mean, they obviously did, or else they wouldn't be sitting here, you
Some things were
know?
really clear. Some things were really clear because people came prepared. Some people
Yes.
came very
Okay,
prepared.
that's important,
And
right?
that some people showed extreme respect for the work, and we acknowledged that. And no, Arisa went to the trouble of making a whole website just for people auditioning, you know, with all the background on everything. And I think a lot of people went into that, and so.
And people like researched,
Yeah.
like did the background research, looked at the poems. I mean, it was like what I think it was really about what they were bringing already to
Right.
the audition, and we saw it. We just saw it. The amount of time they took with the work, we knew like the tracks were all funny. So it was interesting to see people be adaptable in that regard. Like, oh yeah, I can start at this bar and all of these things, or oh yeah, I can sing row, row, row your boat for harmony, or you know, it's so that sense of being able to like be flexible and shift, but also have a discipline, you know. And I think everyone came there disciplined, like, and we really loved that. Like they, you know, they just came already ready to work.
And I would like to,
And they had worked.
Yeah.
and they had worked because you worked.
True.
And I just want to just give a shout out to that, because if I were auditioning and you sent me a link to that website, and actually this was my experience when I looked at the website, I'm like, yeah, this is just going in.
Right.
Nothing from nothing leaves nothing. You got to have something. If you want to be with me, because I'm bringing it. So if you want to, nothing from nothing leave. Oh, you know, it's a song for everything. Me, you got to have something if you want to be with me, because I'm bringing it. You know, and you are. So I just want to just like acknowledge that, right?
Thank you.
People work when we model, when we see that modeled, and yeah, that's
People respond to that energy,
absolutely.
For sure.
They know. I don't know if I ain't gonna mess with this.
Yeah.
I don't think I want to waste her time, because I don't have what. There's some requirements. I mean, I told a couple of people about it, and they were like, you know what? No, I don't think so. And it's because you there was no question. You placed the bar, and that was it. So,
And some people came and sang, and it just wasn't the right time and space and connection for them.
Yeah.
And
their
we didn't
music.
want to hold them back from the thing that is the right time and space and connection for
Right.
them.
That's true.
So
that's all a collaborative process.
It
as
is.
well.
It is, yeah.
And to be open, and that piece around compassion and letting it flow and come and go as we can. There's one musician
involved in the project. It's written for jazz trio and trumpet, and possibly trombone.
Yes. That would be nice.
And I can envision that in a later iteration it would have, expand out to string section and more horns and so forth. But I'm trying to use that jazz trio, but not always in a jazz way, and with some bowed bass and lots of piano and various combinations, but that's the basic instrumentation of it.
Now, when there was a way that a process of going through, selecting the vocalists, even though it's a small, very minimal instrumentation as far as the instruments go, the band. Do you go through the same kind of process when you think about musicians to play these pieces?
In this case, I kind of just went through the fact that I've spent a lot of time here and know a lot of musicians and have worked with many musicians, and people have different availabilities, and it's a different process. I guess you could say that. I've been working with people and talking with people, and I had the trumpet player in mind the whole time, and so I'm kind of,
and that's
Mark Wright, and I'm having him, so I kind of keep his sound in mind when I'm writing. But for the rhythm section, it's more just being open to who's available and talking to people. And
I guess what I'm getting at is something that's like it's absolute. To hear the notes, play them.
Oh, I see.
As opposed to, like, say, the Jessica Jones Quartet or whatever.
Right.
That's a different.
Right, more loose or whatever.
Or who you choose to.
You're really basing it on what they're
perform with.
This situation is going to be. It has, like with Mark, it has a lot of room for, hey, make something that sounds good under the vocals here. So there's going to be some of that with. So. In that case, you have to find the right people.
Right.
You're right.
You have to hear.
You have to hear it. It has to be somebody who has a vocabulary you trust, just like what we were saying about the vocalists. Yeah.
And you must also feel something when they play, too. I mean, they could have a vocabulary they trust and just like...
No, that I trust.
Yeah, but that you trust, but you still might not like it. I mean, you trust it. That's what I'm saying. I'm trying to get at this.
I trust
how does this
you
work?
to bring something that is going to be at the times that I need it, and you'll know when to back off, and you'll know what's supporting a singer, and you'll know what's not, and you'll sense when it's a good time for you to step up. And
right. Things right now. The first thing is, I'm just curious about the time frame, like when you started. And when you started this whole project, how long has it been in development?
Okay, 2 or 3 years. Yes,
2 or 3 years. Okay.
Just from the initial conversation and the first couple of pieces, and then it kind of got ratcheted up this last year.
Yeah, especially in July when we found out we got the grant from the city of Oakland.
Okay, so so this is how you're funding this project.
Yeah, so this stage of the project is funded by the city of Oakland. We got the cultural funding grant, and so that's like $5,000, and we're going to put that towards doing a sneak preview in July, which Ellen Sebastian Chang will be moderating. And it's going to be a concert of songs just to give the community a sense of like what we've done. Look, we're serious now. Hopefully someone sitting in the audience will be like, come, we'll make this into a full production. So, and that's the goal. So this is the first stage, and the next stage is moving towards a full blown out production of this.
So the funding from the Oakland Cultural Arts is for this.
It's
this
for
first
this
piece only.
stage. It's like for us to write the score, to do the libretto, do these auditions, and have the sneak preview in July. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm thinking of.
I was just wondering why you chose postpartum to do as a opera. Why this piece?
It's the story. The story itself. It felt like it lent itself to opera. Just the tragedy, the element of tragedy. I was thinking when writing the poems, I had a chorus in mind. So there was this sense of multiple voices operating in the work already for me. And so so for me, it just felt like a natural leap if I was going to take it off the page.
Knowing the story, knowing how you've chosen to do this, this is, for me, this is really, really important work. Very important work and it is big. And I think choosing opera seems just quintessentially important because opera, the scale of it is big, and this is big material. And the idea that you need something grand and you need something that really frames the emotions, as you said, that allows us to feel it on the scale that this tragedy happened. You know, and so I think it's just perfect, and that.
Why do you say it's important? What's behind that idea?
Because when I'm reading how Arisa is thinking about the work, and now hearing the music the way that you're framing it, it does. There are certain forms. There are certain tragedies that are so hard to, as you said, you already said it, make sense of. There is no answer that we can really answer. All we can do is have conjecture. And so as an artist, that is part of your work, is to make those conjectures and frame those in a way that makes our lives containable, makes our lives continue to be possible. That's what Greek mythology is about. That's what Greek tragedy is about. That's why Medea becomes a character that any woman that's ever had a family or children. As a child, when I was growing up, one of the big scandals in our town was Ola May. You know, Ola May killed her husband and her kids, and part of the joke among the black folks in the small farm town, they said, oh yeah, that husband was always beating Ola May, and he came home and he said, Ola May, my shirt's not done. She said, and then them kids came in there and said, Mama, we put some cheese whiz on the wall, and that was it. Ola May killed everybody. And so even though we laughed as black folks, said, yes, she went crazy, that is tragedy on the grandest of scale.
Yeah.
So what makes a woman go into that level of tension and madness, and so I just think it's really, I mean, I'm having a hard time talking about it because it's really powerful what the both of you are doing, and to, as you said, invite these women in to also embody this kind of a journey, because this is
It's a journey.
This is a deep journey, and definitely you all have to take care of each other while you're doing this. Anyway, that's a mouthful, but I feel very lucky that you invited me to be a part of this on a small scale with you.
Well, it seems to me that already there's a lot of emotional release happening, and I wonder if this was part of your intent, because I imagine that the work will provide emotional release for the audience, because I mean, certainly for those who have had suicide in their family, of which it turns out there's several of us, but also for the general public. You know, reading the newspaper every week, you read some story about some tragedy like that or on that scale, and generally we kind of just shake our heads and turn the page and go on to the next article, but that may not be really healthy. I think these things deserve emotional release, and grieving, really. And then the combination of the beauty of the poetry and the beauty of the music can bring out the emotions, can free people of these pent-up emotions that's what it seems to me, and I'm just wondering if that was part of your intent.
For me, I feel like that's the experience that I have when I see good music and art is, there's something about it that helps you make sense of things and helps you, you know, take another step. You know, like we're here, this stuff is happening, oh my gosh, take another step, you know?
Yeah.
And I know that I get that feeling from art. And that, so I feel like for me, that art has that function in my life. And if this can be that way for people, then that would be a goal, an artistic goal to me. So definitely, I don't think we intended that this is a public service, and that's why we're writing it. Because as artists, you know, you're going in to dig as deep as you can because that's the service you can do. So I think everybody's on the same page with that. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, just coming with a certain kind of honesty in the writing and in vulnerability. I hope that does translate, you know, just, yeah, that was just my intention, is to strip bare.
Yeah. We had a nice round table discussion the first day, and along with the synchronicities, you know, of seeing that people have experienced this in their lives, in their personal lives. You know, I can only know what I've been doing for the last 10 or so years and what I've been focusing on, but I'm honored and I'm humbled that you have built the thing for us to come to with this piece of ourselves. Just in the, you know, first couple of days of learning the songs and getting, you know, deeper into the material and the words and the concepts, you know, it's like you've created a container for us to have a relationship with something unseen. And they've suddenly become these autonomous figures, you know, when you told us about the characters of the Fates especially. And just like what Phoebe was saying about us turning a page and, oh, we can just pass through the massive amounts of trauma that exist, you know, or that are happening daily, but not realizing that they have an impact on us. And when we can see it in this context of, oh, now this emotional energy or thought or experience is now an autonomous figure who may be haunting the head or the soul, the mind of someone, and that can convince them to do something. They're not as minuscule or, you know, we can't dismiss them as easily. Trivial, exactly. So I think with regard to that, like, creating the framework to actually have that interaction with something unseen is extremely powerful. Yeah, I mean, I talk more about my own personal, we'll talk later, you know, but just for, you know, that I am honored to have been a part of it, and just personally coming, you know, to the audition and the process and the way that you reached out to me at Goddard, and I had no idea what you were working on. But yeah, it's a beautiful thing to experience, to witness.
Do the piece I See You. This is the piece that Willow sings. It's played by Larena, and it's the point where this Willow is the character who is followed by the spirit of the daughter, and this is the point where Willow encounters her, where there's a witnessing. And it's also just, in general, I feel a song that speaks to us seeing each other and friendship and love, and it's light. This one's lighter, but necessary.
Are we going to try to do the whole thing there? Talk a little more. Talk a little more.
About the piece? I'm
closer.
So you're saying this is a song that's sung to the daughter?
Yes, to the daughter. So she manifests in Willow's life, and so Willow sees her, and so this is the encounter of the two.
Is the daughter an actual character in the
She functions as a spiritual character that then becomes materialized in the end.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ready? 1, 2, 1, 2, 3.
I see you, you see me, we are eye to eye. I know you, we are kin, we are way back then. Up real high, down real low, way that side of the fence. We go broad, and we 15 cents, salt and vinegar chips. Hoot and holler and carry on. I love you, think that. I see you for who you are. You don't need to lie. That is my fortune. I see you, I see you for who you are. I see you, I see you. You don't need to lie. I see you for who you are. That is my fortune.
Nice.
And all of these are with 2 days of rehearsal.
Yes.
So
That's what I
pretty
was
incredible.
mentioning. It's just like
That's what I was making.
a couple of days.
Yeah.
And so how many more rehearsals are there?
We have one more tomorrow, and then Jessica leaves us for New York. But we are gonna plan to get together in the meantime, like in May and June, and then dress rehearsals in July.
Beautiful. Well, all right. So we've completed this beautiful work in progress and an understanding of this work, and met the artists, and especially Arisa and Jessica. And I want to remind everyone to mark your calendars for the phase 1 of what's on its way to becoming a major production in the United States of America.
And beyond.
That would be what'd you say?
And beyond.
And beyond. Yeah. So anyway, the sneak preview of Postpartum, the opera, will be presented on Sunday, July 13th at 3 p.m. At the Oakland School of the Arts in the Marion E. Green Black Box Theater, which is located at 531 19th Street. That's at the ground floor of the Fox Theater, Oakland, Fox Oakland. And tickets are $20. And if you want more information,
They can go to the
they
website,
can go to the website, which is
postpardontheopera.wordpress.com.
Postpardon the Opera
.wordpress.com.
.wordpress.com.
Say thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone,
Yes,
for coming.
thanks.
Thank you.